Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast, English Listening Practice Podcast topic name is the Civil Rights Movement in the United States. Today, we're really digging into one of the most crucial, vibrant, and complex periods in U.S. history. The Civil Rights Movement, primarily spanning, from the mid-1950s to the late 1960s. This wasn't just about changing a few laws. It was a massive collective undertaking aimed at tearing down these deeply ingrained systems of racial segregation, discrimination, and, systemic inequality. What truly stands out, I think, is how it's powered by the sheer courage of everyday individuals, often alongside visionary leaders.
And, it's vital to grasp that this movement didn't just emerge overnight. Its roots actually stretch back centuries, profoundly embedded in the constant resistance against slavery, the oppressive Jim Crow laws, and just persistent systemic racism. The strategies employed were incredibly diverse, everything from nonviolent direct action and meticulously planned legal challenges. Pondo, sophisticated grassroots organizing, and powerful cultural expression. These efforts truly forced the United States to confront some of the most fundamental contradictions as a nation. And the victories, like the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, didn't just rewrite policy. They fundamentally reshaped cultural narratives and even inspired global movements for justice and human rights.
That's a crucial observation. So as we embark on this deep dive, our mission is to offer you a comprehensive and richly detailed understanding of this transformative era. We'll explore its many complexities, the incredible triumphs, the inevitable setbacks, the internal debates that shaped its direction, and its enduring broader impact, helping you understand not just what happened, but why it continues to matter so much today. Let's start by laying the historical groundwork, because understanding the roots of this movement is absolutely essential to appreciating its scale. Our journey really begins with the institution of slavery, which from the early 17th century forcibly transported millions of Africans to the Americas and subjected them to brutal dehumanization.
Right. And it's important to understand that slavery was far more than just an economic system. It was a deeply ingrained social and political structure designed specifically to establish and maintain rigid racial hierarchies. Enslaved people were stripped of their basic human rights, faced unspeakable violence daily, but here's the thing, they never stopped fighting back, constantly finding ways to resist. We see this in pivotal moments like Nat Turner's rebellion in Virginia in 1831, Sojourner Truth's powerful advocacy for freedom and women's rights, and of course, the Underground Railroad, that clandestine network that helped thousands escape to freedom, famously guided by figures like Harriet Tubman. The Civil War, 1861 to 1865, marked a significant turning point, culminating in the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 and the 13th Amendment in 1865, which legally abolished slavery nationwide. But as you said, this was merely the beginning of the long road to true freedom.
And after that seismic shift, we had the brief yet hopeful period of Reconstruction from 1865 to 1877. This was a critical window when African Americans had a real opportunity to integrate into society. We saw the establishment of the Freedmen's Bureau providing vital support, and the 14th Amendment granting citizenship and equal protection, and the 15th Amendment, which aimed to secure voting rights for black men.
African Americans truly seized these new possibilities. They established their own schools, churches, businesses, but participated in politics at unprecedented levels. I mean, think about figures like Hiram Revels, the first black U.S. senator, or Robert Smalls, a former slave who became a congressman in South Carolina. They were actually elected. However, these remarkable gains were met with ferocious backlash from white Southerners determined to restore white supremacy. Groups like the Ku Klux Klan, founded in 1865, used horrific violence and intimidation to suppress black progress. A critical turning point was the Compromise of 1877. It effectively withdrew federal troops from the South. And this signaled the end of Northern support for Reconstruction, leaving African Americans extremely vulnerable to a systematic undoing of their newfound rights.
And that undoing brings us to the Jim Crow era, a truly dark period of systematic, institutionalized segregation. This wasn't just a few isolated instances, it was a widespread system of legalized separation across virtually all public and private life, famously mandating separate but equal facilities.
And in reality, those separate facilities for Black Americans were consistently inferior, underfunded, designed to reinforce racial hierarchy. The 1896 Supreme Court decision in Plessy v. Ferguson essentially solidified this system. It ruled segregation constitutional, giving it legal teeth for decades. Beyond physical separation, voting rights were systematically suppressed through things like poll taxes, literacy tests, and grandfather clauses. These basically exempted white voters while disenfranchising black citizens. Violence was rampant during this time. Between 1882 and 1968, over 3,400 African Americans were lynched, often publicly as a tool of terror. Activists like Ida B. Wells bravely documented these atrocities, risking her life to expose the truth. Despite this intense oppression, African Americans built incredibly resilient communities through their churches, mutual aid societies, Black-owned businesses. The establishment of the NAACP in 1909 marked a significant organized step toward resistance, laying crucial groundwork.
The early 20th century also witnessed a monumental demographic shift, the Great Migration, roughly 1916 to 1970. This was a mass exodus, over 6 million African Americans moving from the rural South to cities in the North, Midwest, and West, fleeing oppression, seeking better opportunities, especially during World War I labor shortages.
Right. While northern cities certainly seem to offer more economic prospects and a respite from Jim Crow, discrimination unfortunately persisted. Practices like redlining and restrictive covenants confined Black families to segregated, often under-resourced neighborhoods. Employment discrimination was common, and racial tensions sometimes erupted into violence, like the devastating 1919 Red Summer riots. Yet this migration also fundamentally reshaped American culture. It fostered a new urban identity and greatly expanded Black activism and cultural movements. Think of the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s. Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston celebrating Black art and literature, or Marcus Garvey's UNIA promoting Black pride. This period truly laid the groundwork for future organizing.
It's fascinating how global events can ignite domestic change. How did World War II, from 1939 to 1945, become such a pivotal catalyst, really setting the stage for the modern movement? Over 1 million African Americans served, albeit in segregated units, and millions more worked in war industries.
Their service dramatically highlighted the sheer contradiction, didn't it? Fighting for democracy abroad while facing profound discrimination at home. This sparked the Double V campaign victory over fascism abroad and racism at home, which truly galvanized Black communities. A. Philip Randolph's 1941 March on Washington movement, threatening a massive protest, prompted President Roosevelt to issue Executive Order 8802. That banned discrimination in defense industries, a huge early victory demonstrating the power of organized protest. And crucially, returning Black veterans, having fought for their country, were unwilling to simply accept second-class citizenship any longer. This collective determination created incredibly fertile ground for the modern movement to blossom.
That brings us directly to the dawn of the modern civil rights movement, often marked by May 17, 1954. The unanimous Supreme Court decision in Brown v. Board of Education. This really felt like the official start, didn't it?
It absolutely did. This landmark case, skillfully argued by NAACP attorney Thurgood Marshall, directly challenged school segregation, asserting it violated the 14th Amendment's promise of equal protection. The court famously ruled that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal, finally overturning Plessy v. Ferguson, a massive blow to legalize segregation. This wasn't an isolated event, though. It was the culmination of decades of systematic legal challenges by the NAACP. However, Brown faced fierce resistance, particularly in the South. The follow-up ruling, Brown II, called for desegregation with all deliberate speed, a frustratingly vague phrase that allowed for significant delays. Some states, like Virginia, even closed public schools to avoid integration. A stark example was in 1957 when Arkansas Governor Orville Faubus used the National Guard to block the Little Rock Nine from Central High School. This forced President Eisenhower, perhaps reluctantly, to send in federal troops to enforce integration.
And just over a year later, another defining moment, showing the power of collective action. The Montgomery bus boycott. December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat, gets arrested. That single act sparked a 381-day boycott, truly mobilized the city.
An extraordinary demonstration of community power. Black leaders like Joanne Robinson and Edie Nixon quickly organized it, and it brought a young pastor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., to national prominence as its spokesperson. King advocated for nonviolent resistance, drawing inspiration from Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy. The boycott was incredibly well-organized. Carpools, church support, mass meetings, sustained it for over a year. Black Americans, the majority of bus riders, crippled the transit system's revenue, demonstrating immense economic power despite intense white intimidation. It concluded in December 1956 when the Supreme Court ruled bus segregation unconstitutional, a watershed moment, proving collective, nonviolent action could dismantle institutionalized racism, a powerful precedent.
So with these foundational events, let's explore the key strategies and philosophies that really define the movement. Nonviolent resistance became a cornerstone, rooted in moral conviction and strategic pragmatism. Martin Luther King Jr., its most prominent advocate. How did this philosophy truly work in practice?
King drew inspiration from Christian teachings, love and forgiveness, and Gandhi's civil disobedience. It's crucial to understand nonviolence was not passive acceptance, it was confrontational. The idea was to expose the brutality of segregationists while maintaining moral authority, putting the onus of violence on the oppressors. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, co-founded by King in 1957, made nonviolence central. Protests like the Birmingham campaign in '63, facing dogs and fire hoses, generated powerful, shocking images that swayed public opinion, domestically and internationally. While nonviolence was dominant, it wasn't universally embraced. Some, like Malcolm X, argued for self-defense, highlighting internal debates.
And right alongside nonviolence, legal challenges played an absolutely pivotal role, especially the systematic work of the NAACP under Thurgood Marshall.
Their strategy was methodical: dismantle Jim Crow laws through the courts, case by case. Brown v. Board was the most significant victory, but they also secured crucial rulings on voting rights, housing, employment discrimination. NAACP lawyers worked closely with local communities to find plaintiffs willing to face harassment, even violence, for challenging segregation. This created a powerful dual-front legal action combined with direct action steadily eroding systemic racism, showing change could come from streets and courtrooms.
It's one thing to have visionary leaders, but often the true power lies in everyday people, right? Grassroots organizing. What was surprising about how ordinary citizens mobilized?
That's a crucial point. Community organizations, black churches, labor unions, civic groups provided the essential infrastructure for protests, voter drives, boycotts. Figures like Ella Baker championed participatory democracy, emphasizing local communities should lead their own struggles, power from the bottom up. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, formed in 1960, perfectly embodied this. Young activists like John Lewis and Diane Nash organizing sit-ins, freedom rides, voter drives, often at immense personal risk. What's surprising is the sheer ingenuity and resilience these local groups displayed, improvising, adapting to overcome opposition, proving true power resided in the people.
Beyond direct action, cultural expression was a remarkably powerful tool, amplifying the movement's message through music, literature, visual art. How did that amplify the message?
Incredibly effective. Freedom songs like We Shall Overcome became anthems, sung at marches, in jails, building solidarity and courage. Artists like Nina Simone, Sam Cooke, used their music to directly address injustice, uplift spirits. Writers like James Baldwin, Lorraine Hansberry explored the Black experience in powerful works. And critically, the media played an indispensable role, particularly television. Televised images of police brutality, Birmingham, Bloody Sunday shocked the nation, garnered international sympathy. Black newspapers, meanwhile, provided vital platforms, countering biased mainstream coverage, ensuring the true stories were told. This blend made the movement impossible to ignore.
Let's move to some major milestones. The sit-in movement, starting in 1960. February 1st, 4 students in Greensboro sit at a whites-only lunch counter. Such a simple act, but it ignited something huge, didn't it?
It absolutely did. That single act sparked a wave of sit-ins across over 100 cities. Thousands of students bravely challenging segregation in public spaces. These were incredibly well planned. Participants often trained in nonviolent tactics to endure abuse without retaliating. Their disruption of businesses, the intense media attention, pressured local governments and businesses to desegregate. By late 1960, many establishments, including that Greensboro Woolworths, had desegregated. This movement also gave direct rise to SNCC, energizing a new generation of leaders focused on direct action.
The sit-ins exposed brutality, but some places were more resistant. Then came the Freedom Rides in 1961, organized by court to test Supreme Court rulings banning segregation interstate bus terminals.
Indeed, the Freedom Rides became a dramatic showdown. Integrated groups faced brutal violence, particularly in the Deep South. In Anniston, Alabama, a bus was firebombed. Riders severely beaten in Birmingham, where police even allowed the Klan to attack them. The sheer bravery of the Freedom Riders drew national attention, exposing the South's blatant defiance of federal law, forcing the nation to witness the raw violence. This compelled the Kennedy administration, initially hesitant, to finally intervene, sending federal marshals, issuing regulations to strictly enforce desegregation, harrowing, but ultimately successful.
Then the Albany movement, 1961-1962 in Albany, Georgia. An early attempt to desegregate an entire community. What made it different? What were the lessons?
This movement, supported by SNCC and SCLC, faced considerable challenges. Strategic missteps, plus police chief Lori Pritchett's calculated nonviolent arrests. He shrewdly avoided violent confrontations that would grab headlines. King himself was arrested, then released to avoid creating a martyr. While it didn't achieve immediate sweeping desegregation, it offered invaluable lessons. Underscored the importance of unified leadership, sustained pressure, and adapting strategy to the opposition's tactics, a learning experience for the whole movement.
So applying those lessons, then came the Birmingham Campaign in 1963, launched by SCLC in Birmingham, Alabama, Birmingham. This campaign became a real turning point.
It certainly did. During this campaign, King was arrested, penned his famous letter from Birmingham jail, a powerful defense of civil disobedience. The real turning point, though, was when police, under Commissioner Bull Connor, unleashed fire hoses and police dogs on peaceful protesters, including children. Televised images of this brutality shocked the nation, galvanized public support, put immense pressure on the Kennedy administration for legislation. This campaign directly led to desegregation in Birmingham businesses and undeniably laid crucial groundwork for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The moral contrast was just too stark.
And that momentum built to the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, August 28, 1963, over 250,000 people, a defining moment. Felt like a culmination.
An incredible display of unity and moral force, meticulously organized by veterans like A. Philip Randolph, Bayard Rustin, alongside leaders from major civil rights groups. Its centerpiece, of course, Martin Luther King Jr.'s iconic "I Have a Dream" speech at the Lincoln Memorial, painting that powerful vision of a future judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. The sheer size, the integrated crowd, the media coverage exerted undeniable pressure on Congress, made the call for legislation impossible to ignore.
That brings us to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Landmark legislation outlawing discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. This wasn't just changing laws, was it? A seismic shift, forcing businesses, public life to confront decades of discrimination.
Absolutely. Signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson, July 2, 1964, despite significant congressional opposition, especially Southern Democrats filibustering for months. The act's power wasn't just prohibition, but psychological impact. It fundamentally challenged the legitimacy of segregation, signaled a national commitment, banned segregation in public accommodations, prohibited employment discrimination, strengthened federal enforcement of school desegregation, addressed voting rights abuses. What's often overlooked is how it empowered the federal government with enforcement tools, shifting the burden from individuals to a federal mandate. It truly changed the legal landscape overnight.
Even with that, the core demand for voting rights remained. African Americans still face huge barriers like literacy tests, poll taxes, especially in the South. This led to the Selma to Montgomery March and ultimately the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Why was the right to vote still such a fierce battle?
Because voting was seen as the ultimate pathway to political power, to self-determination. In 1965, SNCC and SCLC organized a voting rights campaign in Selma, Alabama, culminating in a planned march to the Capitol. March 7, 1965 became Bloody Sunday. Marchers, including John Lewis, brutally attacked by state troopers at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Televised images of this horror profoundly shocked the nation, directly spurred President Johnson to introduce the Voting Rights Act. A federally protected march then proceeded on March 21st. The act, signed August 6, 1965, prohibited discriminatory voting practices, authorized federal oversight, and led to a dramatic surge in black voter registration. This act transformed the political landscape of the South.
By 1966, the movement's focus began expanding north, addressing housing discrimination, urban poverty. The Chicago Freedom Movement, led by MLK Jr., was the approach different confronting these issues.
It was indeed. Open housing marches in white Chicago neighborhoods, challenging discriminatory real estate practices, faced incredibly violent resistance. Hostile crowds, rocks, bottles. While immediate success was limited in Chicago itself, the campaign drew crucial national attention to systemic issues like redlining, exploitative housing, deep economic inequality in northern cities. It influenced later policies like the Fair Housing Act of 1968, but also underscored the complex, entrenched nature of economic and residential segregation. The fight was far from over.
Speaking of influential figures, Martin Luther King Jr. is undoubtedly the movement's most iconic figure. A Baptist minister, eloquent advocate, committed to nonviolence. What made his leadership so central?
He rose to prominence during Montgomery, became a global symbol of justice, moral courage. His leadership in SCLC, Birmingham, the March on Washington solidified his role. King's philosophy evolved. Initially focused on dismantling legal segregation, he later broadened his scope to economic inequality, even opposed the Vietnam War. His assassination, April 4th, 1968, in Memphis was devastating. Created a void, but his legacy endures as a beacon of hope, a testament to nonviolent social change.
And we can't talk icons without mentioning Rosa Parks, the mother of the civil rights movement, sparking the Montgomery bus boycott. Often seen as spur of the moment, but there's more, isn't there?
Much more. Her quiet strength. She was a seasoned activist, an NAACP member, already challenging segregation for years. It wasn't just spontaneous, it was a deliberate, principled stand by someone deeply involved. Her individual act highlighted the power of one person to inspire countless others, small acts having monumental ripple effects. Parks continued her activism throughout her life, proving ordinary people were the essential driving force, not just public faces.
Offering a contrasting vision was Malcolm X, a minister for the Nation of Islam, advocating black self-reliance, separatism. How did his message resonate? How did his views evolve?
His fiery rhetoric resonated deeply with frustrated urban African Americans facing violence, persistent inequality. He offered an alternative: black pride, self-defense, liberation by any means necessary. After a transformative pilgrimage to Mecca in 1964, Malcolm's philosophy began evolving toward a more inclusive vision of racial unity. His assassination, February 21st, 1965, tragically cut short his developing legacy. But his ideas profoundly influenced the Black Power movement, still spark important discussion.
Behind the scenes, but no less impactful, Ella Baker, a true architect, emphasizing grassroots empowerment, democratic leadership. Why was her approach so vital?
Baker worked with nearly every major civil rights group, NAACP, SCLC, SNCC, tirelessly mentoring young activists. Her philosophy of participatory democracy was transformative, empowering communities to lead their own struggles, bottom up, not relying on a few charismatic leaders. This shaped SNCC's decentralized, youth-led structure. She famously believed strong people don't need strong leaders. Her contributions, sometimes overlooked, were absolutely critical to the movement's long-term success and sustainability.
And then there's John Lewis, remarkable leader in SNCC, lifelong advocate, personifying nonviolent courage.
Lewis truly exemplified that courage, endured brutal beatings during freedom rides, again on Bloody Sunday. As SNCC chairman, key role in voter registration, delivered a powerful, urgent speech at the March on Washington. Later served decades as a respected U.S. congressman, a moral conscience until his passing in 2020. His unwavering commitment to what he called good trouble continues to inspire generations. Challenging injustice, even at great personal risk, is essential.
We also want to briefly acknowledge other key figures. Medgar Evers, Mississippi NAACP field secretary, assassinated in '63 for voter registration work. Fannie Lou Hamer, powerful SNCC organizer, voting rights advocate, famous for her testimony at the '64 DNC. Bear Rustin, brilliant strategist, key organizer of the March on Washington. Diane Nash, fearless SNCC leader, coordinated freedom rides after initial violence. And Thurgood Marshall, NAACP lawyer, later the first Black Supreme Court justice. Each, and so many more, played indispensable roles. Of course, the movement faced immense challenges, fierce opposition. White resistance and violence were rampant, from legal maneuvers to brutal atrocities. How did activists maintain resolve, knowing what they faced daily?
It's almost unbearable to comprehend that level of brutality. Groups like the KKK, white citizens' councils, local authorities systematically used intimidation, bombings, murders. Tragic examples: the horrific 1955 murder of 14-year-old Emmett Till, the 1963 Birmingham church bombing killing 4 young girls, the 1964 murders of Freedom Summer volunteers Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner. Police violence was constant, public. Economic reprisals like job firings were common. It's critical to understand this wasn't random. It was a calculated strategy to maintain the status quo. The resilience required by activists facing these threats daily is truly staggering. Force them to innovate, shift tactics, find strength in numbers and moral conviction.
It's also important that the movement itself wasn't monolithic. It had internal debates, divisions over strategy. How did these conversations shape its direction?
There was certainly that prominent divide. Nonviolence, King, versus self-defense arguments, Malcolm X, particularly among urban youth. SNCC's shift toward Black Power in the late 60s, led by Stokely Carmichael, emphasized Black self-reliance, cultural pride, sometimes caused friction with integrationist groups like NAACP. Generational differences emerged too, younger activists favoring more direct confrontation. While challenging, sometimes painful, these discussions ultimately enriched the movement. Addressing a broader spectrum of needs and perspectives showed its dynamic nature.
And the federal government's response was often ambivalent, inconsistent, not always a clear ally.
Not at all. Eisenhower reluctantly enforced Brown in Little Rock only when defiance was blatant. Kennedy, often cautious, worried about Southern white voters, while LBJ became a crucial ally, signing landmark legislation. His administration's Vietnam War escalation diverted resources, attention from domestic reforms. Moreover, the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover actively undermined the movement through COINTELPRO, a secret program surveilling, harassing leaders like King, attempting to discredit him. This federal ambivalence highlighted the movement's reliance on sustained grassroots pressure to force change. Government acted only when compelled by public outcry.
By the mid-1960s, growing frustration with the slow pace of change, persistent violence, gave rise to the Black Power movement, coined by Stokely Carmichael in '66, emphasizing Black pride, self-determination, economic empowerment.
That's right. A significant shift, often prioritizing racial pride and self-sufficiency over integration. The Black Panther Party, founded by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale in '66, combined armed self-defense protecting communities from police brutality with community programs. Free breakfast initiatives, addressing urban poverty. Black Power also expanded focus to cultural identity. Black is beautiful, promoting African heritage. Controversial, but challenged assimilationist ideals. King's assassination in '68 tragically sparked riots in over 100 cities, reflecting widespread anger, despair. The Fair Housing Act of 1968, passed days after King's death, addressed housing discrimination, but the movement's momentum shifted, faced new challenges: economic inequality, political backlash.
Despite ongoing challenges, the civil rights movement achieved extraordinary successes, fundamentally dismantled legal segregation, secured voting rights, significantly transformed public attitudes. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, truly monumental achievements.
And their impact was profound, continues to reverberate. Dramatic increase in African-American political representation. Thurgood Marshall, first Black Supreme Court Justice in '67. Crucially, the movement inspired countless other struggles globally: women's rights, Native American, Chicano, LGBTQ+ movements, anti-apartheid in South Africa. Culturally, fostered vibrant African-American identity through Motown, literature like Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, visual art like Jacob Lawrence. However, it's vital to recognize the work remains unfinished. Economic disparities persist. Mass incarceration disproportionately affects Black communities. Voter suppression tactics have resurfaced since the Supreme Court weakened the Voting Rights Act in 2013. The Black Lives Matter movement, founded 2013, draws directly from the civil rights movement strategies, spirit, continuing the vital fight against systemic racism, reminding us the journey is ongoing.
As we conclude this deep dive, it's clear the civil rights movement was a triumph of the human spirit, a profound testament to collective action, moral courage, unrelenting hope, a movement of ordinary people, students, preachers, workers, families, who risked everything to demand justice.
Their victories undeniably reshaped America, dismantling legal segregation, expanding democratic participation. Yet their struggle also serves as a powerful reminder that the pursuit of equality is an ongoing project, requiring constant vigilance, effort. Exploring its history, milestones, leaders, challenges, gives a deeper appreciation for its complexity, its enduring relevance. It teaches us profound change is always possible when people unite, confront injustice with courage, and refuse to accept the status quo.
Indeed. As we face contemporary challenges, from racial inequity to economic injustice, the movement's powerful legacy continues to inspire us to keep working towards a more just and equitable world for everyone. Please like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.
Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast, English Listening Practice podcast topic name is Traditional versus Modern Values. We're diving into something that, well, really shapes societies all over the world. It's this intricate dance between traditional ways and modern ideas.
It really is.
And it creates this fascinating mix of, opportunities, but also some pretty complex challenges that's constantly redefining things.
And I think our goal today, for you listening, isn't really to say one is better than the other.
Right.
It's more about understanding how we can maybe blend the best bits of both. Aiming for a future that feels, harmonious and meaningful, drawing strengths from all sides.
Okay, so let's lay the groundwork. When we talk about traditional values, what are we really talking about? What's the core idea?
Well, fundamentally, they're the beliefs, the customs, the practices that get passed down, often over generations. They're usually rooted pretty deep in cultural norms, sometimes religious beliefs, or just the way a society has always worked. The focus tends to be on continuity, keeping things going. Stability, exactly. And collective well-being, what's good for the group, and a real respect for established systems. And even though they look different everywhere, you find these common threads.
Like what? What are some common themes?
Well, a big one is family and community.
Yeah.
The family unit, often the extended family, is usually the cornerstone.
Right.
Group harmony often comes before what one individual might want. You see this really clearly in, say, South Asian cultures with filial piety kids honoring elders. Or think about multi-generational homes you find in places like rural India. It's very common.
That makes sense. And you mentioned respect for systems. Does that tie into authority?
It does, significantly. Respect for authority is central. Hierarchies are often quite important, whether it's elders, religious figures, community leaders. They're often revered for their wisdom, their experience. Think about tribal chiefs in many African societies, like the Ashanti of Ghana, who mediate disputes. Their word carries weight.
Got it.
Then you have the actual cultural and religious practices, rituals, ceremonies. These aren't just formalities. They actively preserve a group's identity.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The Japanese tea ceremony, it's incredibly meticulous, right? It embodies Zen principles like mindfulness, or indigenous Australian dreamtime storytelling, which connects people directly to their ancestral past, to their land.
Wow. Okay.
And finally, there are often strong moral and ethical codes, clear guidelines for how to behave. This builds trust, cohesion. Think of the 10 Commandments in Christianity, or Islam's focus on charity, zakat.
So it really paints a picture of traditional values as this kind of anchor, grounding people in heritage, giving purpose, stability.
That's a great way to put it, an anchor.
But I guess the flip side could be, does that very stability sometimes make it harder to adapt or change?
That's the inherent tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
That stability is invaluable, but yes, it can sometimes lead to a resistance to new ideas or different ways of doing things.
Okay, so if tradition is the anchor, then modern values, they feel more like the current, maybe dynamic, reflecting this globalized, tech-driven world we're in now. They seem to prioritize individual action, innovation, being adaptable, often pushing against those older norms. What defines them?
Yeah, modern values definitely push in new directions. Individualism is probably the most prominent feature.
Personal freedom.
Personal freedom, self-expression, the idea that you define your own path. Think about movements like feminism or LGBTQ plus rights. They're all about empowering individuals to shape their own identities. The global push for marriage equality is a really powerful example of that shift towards personal choice.
Right.
Then there's this constant drive for innovation and progress. Our modern world is built on it.
Technology, science.
Exactly. Technological advancements aimed at improving life. mRNA vaccines, electric cars, AI, renewable energy. It's all driven by this belief that change, advancement, is how we make things better.
Pushing boundaries, basically.
Spot on. And linked to that is diversity and inclusion. Actively promoting equality across different identities, race, gender, orientation, ability.
So things like affirmative action.
Affirmative action, global human rights campaigns, yeah. Trying to dismantle discriminatory structures. South Africa's post-apartheid constitution is a really strong example of building inclusivity into the foundation of a nation.
Okay.
And finally, inescapable today is global connectivity. The internet, social media, easy travel, it's all fostered this interconnected world. Platforms like, say, X allow ideas to cross borders instantly. It creates a much more cosmopolitan global perspective for many people.
It's undeniable that modern values fuel incredible change and progress, but I do wonder, does that intense focus on the individual and the constant push for what's new ever come at a cost? Like maybe weakening community ties or leaving people feeling a bit adrift, disconnected?
That's a really insightful point.
Yeah.
Yes, while they drive progress and open doors, that focus on the individual can sometimes lead to feelings of isolation, and the sheer speed of change can make it hard for people to feel grounded, perhaps losing touch with those community bonds tradition offers.
What's really striking is that this whole dynamic, this push and pull between tradition and modernity, it's not actually new, is it? It goes way back.
Yeah.
How did this evolution start?
You're right, it has deep historical roots. If you think about it, traditional values mostly grew out of agrarian society.
Farming community.
Yeah, where survival literally depended on everyone working together, following the established rules. Think ancient Mesopotamia, communal irrigation systems required immense cooperation. Duty was paramount. Or feudal Europe with its rigid hierarchies, everyone knew their place, and that maintained order.
So the group's survival was everything.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
The big shift towards what we now call modern values really started picking up steam with the Enlightenment back in the 17th, 18th centuries.
Reason, science.
Exactly. Thinkers like John Locke championed reason, individual rights, challenging the authority of monarchs and the church. That was a huge change.
And then came the Industrial Revolution.
That just accelerated everything dramatically. 18th, 19th centuries, people moved to cities, machines changed work. It broke down a lot of those old rural traditions, weakened extended families, and really fueled individualism.
Right.
And then the 20th century, world wars, decolonization, the rise of mass media. People were suddenly exposed to so many different ideas. And then, of course, the digital age kicked in late in the century, and cultural boundaries just started blurring like never before with instant global communication.
It's amazing to think how that history plays out right now. You could have, say, a young person in Brazil streaming K-pop music on their phone, while also getting ready to take part in traditional carnival celebrations in their town. And maybe they're also active online advocating for climate action.
That's a perfect illustration. All those layers coexisting in one person's life. It really shows how fused these things have become.
Okay, let's dig into the strengths. Even in our super fast modern world, traditional values still offer some real benefits, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. They have enduring strengths. A major one is stability and security.
That anchor idea again.
Exactly. Traditions provide a kind of predictable framework. And that's incredibly comforting, especially when things feel uncertain or chaotic, like during a crisis. Think about religious rituals, Ramadan, Christmas. They offer continuity, bring people together year after year. Or in Japan, the Obon festival honoring ancestors reinforces those family bonds and a sense of shared history.
And what about the wider community?
That's another huge strength. Community cohesion. Traditional values are often fantastic at fostering strong social bonds.
A sense of belonging.
A real sense of belonging. In many African cultures, communal living creates these incredibly tight-knit support systems. You know the Zulu concept of Ubuntu?
I am because we are.
That's the one. It beautifully sums up that emphasis on collective identity, making sure people feel supported, connected. You also get clear moral guidance. Traditional ethical codes offer clarity on right and wrong. Buddhism's Eightfold Path, for instance, promotes ethical conduct. Islam's emphasis on zakat, charity, encourages looking out for others. These guidelines can simplify complex moral questions and build social trust.
Makes sense.
And, of course, cultural preservation. Traditions are how we safeguard heritage. Think of the Maori in New Zealand preserving their language, their haka dance, despite colonial pressures. Or Native American powwows celebrating identity through dance, music, storytelling, keeping ancient traditions alive and vibrant.
It's clear they offer so much in terms of stability and identity, but as we touched on, that strength can also mean rigidity, can it? Like, strict gender roles in some traditional contexts might really limit opportunities, especially for women, clashing directly with modern ideas about equality that must create friction.
It absolutely does. That's often where the sharpest conflicts arise.
Yeah.
The very things that provide strength can also become points of tension or barriers to change.
Okay, let's flip the coin again. What about the advantages of modern values? What unique benefits do they bring to the table? Maybe things that tradition finds harder to deliver?
Modern values definitely offer some unique and powerful advantages. First off, personal empowerment.
Choosing your own path.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Prioritizing individual choice allows people to pursue passions, define their own lives. Think about the rise of women in top leadership roles, people like Angela Merkel or Indra Nooyi. That reflects this shift. Or even the gig economy, offering flexible careers tailored to individual skills and lifestyles.
Right.
Second, and this is huge, innovation and progress. This is where modern values really shine. That constant drive for improvement transforms lives.
Technology again.
Technology, science, medicine. Breakthroughs like CRISPR gene editing, renewable energy like solar panels, the incredibly fast development of COVID-19 vaccines. These are all products of modern values pushing the boundaries of what's possible for human well-being.
A focus on improving the human condition then.
Spot on. Third, inclusivity. Modern values actively challenge discrimination and push for equality.
Fighting unfairness.
Yes, movements like Black Lives Matter or global pride events demand justice and fairness. Policies like universal parental leave, like you see in Scandinavia, reflect a deep societal commitment to making sure everyone feels they belong and have equal opportunity.
Okay.
And lastly, adaptability. Modern values encourage being flexible, responding to new opportunities. Big remote work, the digital nomad lifestyle, online learning platforms like Coursera or Upwork, they all show how we can adapt to a rapidly changing world, learn new skills, find new ways to live and work.
It's clear modern values are powerful engines for change. But, coming back to that earlier point, that strong focus on the individual, it can lead to isolation sometimes, maybe weaken those family or community ties. And the constant, relentless change can leave people feeling a bit unmoored, maybe even longing for the stability that tradition provides. It feels like both sides have potential blind spots.
That's a very balanced way to see it. Each system offers something vital, something essential, but neither is perfect. They each present their own set of challenges alongside their strengths.
And this is where it gets really juicy, doesn't it? The clash, where these two sets of values meet head-on. It often sparks conflict, tension, creating some really fascinating dynamics in societies all over the world. Where do we see this friction most clearly?
Oh, it pops up everywhere, often in the most personal areas of life. Take family dynamics, that's a big one.
Marriage, for example?
Exactly. In many traditional cultures, you have arranged marriages designed to prioritize family unity, social status, maybe economic stability. You see this in parts of India, for instance. But modern values stress romantic love, individual choice. So you get this real tension, especially between generations. A young person might feel immense family pressure, but desire to choose their own partner based on love.
I can imagine. What about work?
Workplace culture is another hotspot. Traditional workplaces often value hierarchy, seniority, lifetime loyalty. Think of the classic salaryman culture in Japan.
Right.
But modern workplaces, they tend to prioritize flexibility, skills over tenure, career mobility. Younger generations especially might seek better work-life balance or the freedom of remote work, clashing with those older expectations.
And technology must amplify these clashes, surely.
Oh, massively. Technology and tradition often collide. Social media is a prime example. It challenges traditional ideas about privacy, how you present yourself. In more conservative societies, you might see women using platforms like X to advocate for greater rights, which can lead to significant backlash from those holding traditional views.
Okay.
Then there's education. You have the contrast between traditional methods, maybe rote learning, immense respect for the teacher's authority, like China's intense Gaokao exam system, versus modern education, which tends to prioritize critical thinking, creativity, questioning things. Students often have to navigate both systems, which can be confusing.
Yeah.
And finally, a really sensitive area, gender and identity. Traditional gender roles are often quite fixed, specific expectations for men and women. Modern values champion gender equality, fluidity, the right to define your own identity. So you see clashes like traditional expectations of masculinity in some African cultures bumping up against advocacy for gender-neutral policies. These are deep societal shifts playing out.
It really highlights the challenge, doesn't it? Trying to balance that need for continuity with the drive for change. Lean too hard on tradition, you might stifle progress, but embrace modernity too fiercely and you risk eroding valuable heritage and identity. It's a real tightrope walk.
It really is. And maybe the insight here is that the conflict isn't always just old versus new. Sometimes it's about different ways of trying to meet the same basic human needs, security, belonging, progress.
Yeah.
The tension flares up when the methods seem incompatible.
That's a great point. It makes it less about a battle and more about navigating different paths. Okay, let's make this concrete. It's fascinating to see how different societies are actually doing this navigating. Let's look at some specific global examples or case studies to see tradition and modernity in action. How are different cultures handling this blend?
Great idea. Let's start with Japan's balancing act. Japan is often seen as a masterclass in this.
What so?
Well, they meticulously preserve ancient traditions. Shinto rituals, the tea ceremony, sumo wrestling alongside being a global leader in cutting-edge technology. Think Sony, Toyota.
Right.
There's even a cultural concept, teitmei, public face, versus hana, true feelings, which reflects navigating social harmony and individual expression. Walk through Tokyo, you see the hypermodern Shibuya crossing right near the serene ancient Meiji shrine, or the traditional hanami cherry blossom viewing parties happening while bullet trains zip by. It's a constant coexistence.
Fascinating. What about indigenous communities? They face unique pressures.
Indeed. Consider indigenous communities in Canada like the Cree or the Haida. They face immense challenges preserving traditional values, storytelling, land stewardship amidst modern Canadian society.
But they are adapting.
Yes, powerfully. Younger generations are using modern tools like social media to advocate for Indigenous rights, language revitalization, and cultural continuity. Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission itself is a modern framework trying to address historical injustices while respecting traditional values of healing and community. You even see traditional Haida art, like totem poles, gaining global recognition through modern art platforms, bridging worlds.
That's a really hopeful example of fusion.
Moving across the globe, think about urbanization in Nigeria. Cities like Lagos are exploding with growth, showcasing this traditional modern split vividly.
How does it manifest there?
You have young professionals embracing very modern lifestyles, working in tech, finance, global industries. Yet they often maintain strong connections to traditional practices, like Yoruba naming ceremonies or elaborate Igbo masquerade festivals when they visit their home villages.
So a dual existence.
Very much so. And this duality often sparks debate, especially around things like gender roles. Women pursuing modern careers in Lagos might still face traditional expectations back home, creating complex negotiations in their lives.
And India, such a huge, diverse country, must be a real crossroads.
India's cultural crossroads is incredibly complex and dynamic. You have rural areas where caste traditions and joint family systems remain very influential.
Right.
Contrast that with booming urban centers like Bangalore, hubs of tech and modernity. Young Indians are often navigating both worlds, maybe balancing family expectations around arranged marriage, while also using modern dating apps. They participate enthusiastically in ancient festivals like Diwali. They're also deeply engaged with global music, fashion, and media. Bollywood cinema itself is a perfect example of this fusion traditional epic stories told with dazzling modern production values.
That blend seems key. And finally, a place that's almost synonymous with rapid modernization.
Right, the UAE's global ambition. The United Arab Emirates, especially Dubai, consciously blends the two. You have the almost futuristic skyline with the Burj Khalifa, coexisting with traditional souks, the bustling old markets, and deeply embedded Islamic practices, like observing Ramadan. You'll see Emiratis wearing traditional dress, the abaya or kandura, while fully embracing the latest global fashion trends and technology. Their national strategy, like Vision 2021, explicitly aimed to integrate traditional Emirati values like hospitality with modern goals like sustainability and becoming a global innovation hub. Projects like Masdar City, designed as a sustainable eco-city, embody this planned fusion.
It really seems the societies that manage to thrive are those finding ways to weave these threads together rather than letting one dominate. So how is this balance actually achieved on the ground? What does it look like?
It happens in many ways, often quite organically, sometimes by design. We see a lot of cultural fusion. Think of Singapore again.
The hawker centers.
Exactly. Those traditional food centers are beloved national institutions sitting right alongside gleaming skyscrapers. They celebrate traditional festivals like Chinese New Year with ancient rituals, but the nation is also a hypermodern global finance hub. It's integrated.
What about in education?
Education is another key area. Many modern systems are finding ways to incorporate traditional values. Finland, known for its modern creative approach,
Right, very progressive.
still fosters deep respect for teachers, which is a more traditional value. In India, the prestigious IITs, Indian Institutes of Technology, combine incredibly rigorous, modern technical training with instilling cultural values like discipline and community responsibility in their students.
Interesting. And does this apply to bigger challenges like environmental issues?
Absolutely. Sustainable progress often involves blending old and new. Many environmental movements draw inspiration from traditional concepts of stewardship, of living in balance with nature.
Like indigenous knowledge.
Precisely. Indigenous communities in the Amazon, for example, are combining generations of ecological knowledge with modern conservation science and technology to protect the rainforest. The whole global push for sustainability, in a way, blends a traditional respect for the natural world with modern innovation needed to solve the crisis. And maybe most importantly, it happens through intergenerational dialogue. Families and communities that talk openly, bridging the gap between younger generations embracing change and older generations holding on to tradition. Think of Mexico. Younger people might live very modern lives, but still participate wholeheartedly in Dia de los Muertos, honoring ancestors. It shows traditions aren't static. They can evolve and find new meaning.
It really underscores that finding this balance isn't easy. It takes real effort, compromise, empathy, respecting where you came from while still looking forward, not letting either side completely take over. Now, technology, we've touched on it, but let's focus specifically on its role. It feels like such a powerful catalyst in this whole traditional modern dynamic, but maybe in complicated ways.
It's definitely a double-edged sword, a huge catalyst, as you say. On one hand, technology massively accelerates modern values
How so?
by connecting people instantly across cultures, spreading ideas, enabling innovation at lightning speed. Think about activists using social media like Women in Iran, using platforms like X to organize, advocate for rights, and reach a global audience almost overnight. That reflects modern values of free expression and equality. amplified by tech.
Right, but I've also heard the argument that tech can help preserve tradition. That seems counterintuitive. How does that work?
It's a really crucial point, actually. Technology is becoming a vital tool for preserving tradition. Think about digital archives. They're being used to save endangered languages, like the Cherokee syllabary, documenting them, creating learning tools, giving them a future. Or virtual reality. We can now recreate historical sites like Machu Picchu with incredible detail, making heritage accessible to people who could never visit physically. And online platforms allow diaspora communities, people living far from their homeland, to maintain cultural connections. Imagine virtual Diwali celebrations connecting Indian families scattered across the globe. It keeps traditions alive across distance.
So it's not just about the new, it can reinforce the old too.
Exactly. But there's the other edge of the sword. Technology can also significantly disrupt traditions.
Oh.
When modern media and ideas flood into previously isolated communities via the internet or satellite TV, they can rapidly challenge local customs, beliefs, ways of life. Sometimes this leads to cultural erosion, where traditional practices fade away. A classic example often cited is Bhutan. When they introduced television relatively late, in 1999, it sparked huge debates about the impact of Western shows and values on their deeply ingrained Buddhist culture and traditions. It shows how disruptive that influx can be.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How do we harness all the incredible benefits of technology without letting it overwhelm or erase valuable cultural norms and traditions? It's a huge question for nearly every society today. And it's vital to remember this isn't a one-size-fits-all situation. The way this traditional modern dynamic plays out varies massively depending on the culture, the history, the specific context. We can't just paint it with one brush.
That's absolutely critical. Take collectivist societies, places like China or India. Traditional values, especially around family loyalty and community harmony, often remain incredibly strong, even amidst rapid modernization.
So they coexist.
They often coexist in complex ways. Young people in China might deeply respect Confucian principles of filial piety while also working in hypermodern tech hubs like Shenzhen. In India, as we mentioned, arranged marriages persist alongside the use of modern dating apps. It's not necessarily either.
Okay, and then the contrast.
Contrast that with primarily individualist societies like the US or many Western European nations. Here, modern values, individual freedom, self-expression tend to be dominant. But even here you see interesting trends. There's a growing interest in rediscovering traditions or finding meaning in practices rooted in them.
Like mindfulness.
Mindfulness is a perfect example. It's rooted in ancient Buddhist traditions, but has exploded in popularity in the West as a way to cope with the stresses of modern individualistic life. It shows a search for something perhaps missing. And then you have post-colonial societies across much of Africa, Latin America, parts of Asia. The legacy of colonialism adds another layer of complexity.
How so?
Well, colonial powers often impose their own modern values while suppressing traditional ones. So, after independence, there's often a complex process of reclaiming traditional identity while also engaging with the modern globalized world. South Africa's efforts to promote modern inclusivity while also recognizing traditional tribal leadership systems is one example. Or in Brazil, Afro-Brazilian religions like Candomblé blend African spiritual traditions with elements absorbed over centuries, creating vibrant, unique hybrid cultural forms that are both traditional and modern.
It really shows the diversity of experiences.
And what's fascinating now with globalization is this constant cross-pollination. Yoga from India is global. Democratic ideals spread and reshape traditional hierarchies. It's a constant exchange, influencing both sides.
So looking ahead, where does this leave us? How will this interplay continue to shape our world, especially with huge challenges on the horizon?
Well, it's clear this dynamic isn't going away. If anything, it might intensify. Big challenges like climate change, the rise of AI, massive demographic shifts, these will demand incredible adaptability, leaning into modern values of innovation and flexibility.
But tradition doesn't just vanish.
Not at all. Because at the same time, in a world that feels increasingly complex and uncertain, that fundamental human need for identity, for belonging, for meaning that often draws us back to tradition, to our roots, so the core tension remains.
What about the younger generations, Gen Z, Gen Alpha? They're growing up completely immersed in this digital, globalized world. How might they navigate this differently?
That's a key question. They are unique. Raised digitally, yes, but many also express a deep craving for authenticity, for purpose, for connection, things often associated with tradition.
So they might blend them more naturally.
Potentially, yes. We see them blending traditional practices, maybe prioritizing sustainable living, community gardening, things rooted in older ways of life with very modern tools, like using social media for activism. Think about movements like #FridaysForFuture. It combines collective, community-based action, which feels quite traditional, with sophisticated global networking and communication, which is purely modern.
So what kind of future trends might we see emerging from this?
We could see more deliberate hybrid cultures. Think about planned projects like Saudi Arabia's Neom City. The vision, at least, is to integrate traditional architectural wisdom, respect for the desert environment, with absolutely cutting-edge sustainable technology.
Interesting.
We'll likely see ongoing cultural revival, too.
Yeah.
Indigenous movements worldwide are using modern platforms, websites, apps, social media to teach languages, share stories, preserve traditions, ensuring they don't just survive, but thrive in the digital age, like Aboriginal language revitalization efforts in Australia.
Using the new to save the old.
Precisely. And perhaps, optimistically, we might see the slow emergence of a more global ethics. Not erasing cultural differences, but finding common ground, a shared framework that blends timeless traditional virtues like compassion, wisdom, and community care, with modern principles like human rights, inclusivity, and scientific reason. A way to navigate global challenges together. Ultimately, I think the real task, the ongoing challenge for all of us, individuals and societies, is to consciously create a future that genuinely honors the wisdom of the past while also enthusiastically embracing the potential of innovation, to build a world that feels both deeply rooted and dynamically forward-looking.
What a fascinating exploration. I think if there's one core message to take away from this deep dive, it's that this really isn't about choosing sides, is it? Tradition or modernity?
Not at all.
Maybe the real insight is that harmony isn't just about finding a middle ground, but about actively using the strengths of both. Anchoring our growth, our progress in the wisdom and stability of tradition, while infusing those traditions with the energy, the adaptability, the inclusivity that modernity offers.
Well said. Tradition gives us that stability, that community, that sense of who we are. Modernity drives the innovation, the progress, the ability to adapt and include everyone.
And you, listening, you as an individual and we as societies, we actually have the agency, the power to consciously shape that balance, to decide how we blend the best of both worlds in our own lives and communities.
That's the empowering part. It's an ongoing process, and we all play a role.
So the question to ponder is, as individuals and as part of society, how can you weave tradition and modernity together into your own unique, vibrant tapestry? We really hope this deep dive has given you some fresh perspectives to think about.
We hope so too.
And if it has, please remember to like this video, share it with others who might find it interesting, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel for more deep dives like this one.